Good morning. Today is the 10th day of Adar.
My wedding anniversary, guys.
Your wedding anniversary?
Yeah.
10th of Adar. Look at that.
My granddaughter
right after your birthday. 8 days after your birthday.
My granddaughter had a vote.
And your granddaughter had a vort in Crown Heights, and you had to attend it in Or Yehuda.
And 2 days' time is my father's yahrzeit. Everything is happening. Adar, everything is.
As you said yesterday, when it rains, it pours.
Baruch Hashem.
Okay.
Only be happy with all the good things Hashem gives you.
And I believe it's also the 4th of March? No, 3rd. It's 3rd of March. March 3rd.
Yesterday was my mother's birthday. It's crazy.
And we're nearing the end of our long essay on... Beautiful essay from the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, whose yahrzeit is...
Not for a long time.
Not for a long time. 2nd of Nisan. Right? So... And he's buried in Rostov.
And we're going for the day. Well, we can't go to Rostov anymore. We can't get into Russia.
That's finished. That part of the world right now. And we're continuing. So what does it mean that God is standing behind the wall? And we said there's a wall of holiness, and there's a wall of that Amalek puts, or that the wall that's been put between. That's the way we understand this. The wall between the intellect and the heart. That was a wall that was set up, an iron wall, after the temple was destroyed. The temple was actually the most efficient path to igniting one's heart. Right? And when that that's the same thing. It's the same idea. As the Talmud says that when you go to a place of worship, when you go to a shul. It's a mikdash mat, it's a small temple. And the idea is that there too, there's a flow from the Holy of Holies, from inside the sanctuary, where the ark is, to outside to the altar, which is the heart. Right? So those two things are connected to the point where all the discussions that we have today about what's more important, everything that we discussed during the week, is it the intellect or is it the heart? So in the end we said we're aiming for the heart, but if there's no intellect and there's something, and then the heart, it stays where it was. It stays in the same place. The intellect is what moves it. So all those discussions are very parallel in our parsha. We talked about this last week, if you follow the daily Torah study, about the difference between the opinion of Rashi and the Ramban, Nachmanides, about what's the main element of the temple. Is it the Ark of the Covenant inside the Holy of Holies, or is it the altar outside where the sacrifices are brought? In any case, so even though there's a wall separating them, an iron wall, there are cracks in it. And the cracks, they represent the tshuva me'umka deliba. They represent doing tshuva from the depth of one's heart. And like we said, when you do tshuva from the depths of your heart, what it means is that you're going above both of these elements, both the intellect and the heart. You're going to it is the greatest tshuva, because you're returning to the place. Oh, of course it has to be by tshuva ilah. It has to be by isbonenus. It has to be done by contemplation. There's nothing that can stand before tshuva, even an iron wall. So what is exactly is it?
The Tanya said there's some things which tshuva doesn't help, and here he says nothing stands in the way of tshuva.
No, what we mean by something tshuva doesn't help is tshuvatata. The lower type of tshuva. Tshuva where all you do, it's a big thing, but you change your conduct. Changing your conduct can only help so much. There are things where you have to reignite the whole system, and that comes through intellectual contemplation. So, how do you get to this intellectual contemplation? It says, what we're doing is we're nullifying ourselves in such a way that we, as he says here, we ascend higher than reason. What does that mean? How can a person nullify himself that much? Where can you find so? So that's what we call mesirut nefesh in the end. It's that the person says to himself, look, like you said to yourself, I slept 2 hours. How am I going to come here and learn and daven? And what am I going to do? He says, no, nonetheless, this is important. And even though rationally this doesn't make any sense, but because this is how I serve Hashem, this is what I do. So you didn't change your conduct. You didn't do anything different. But to be able to keep your conduct, you have to take energy. You have to take a motivation from a higher place.
Reserve tank.
Yeah, it's not a reserve tank. If it's a reserve tank, it's still below. There's no tank. You don't need tanks. There's no reserves. Put it that way. He returns. He veers away from the evil to connect to holiness. Just as through the cracks in a wall or through the windows. Here what he means is he says through the windows also. The verse in Song of Songs says, who stands behind our wall, peeking through the cracks, looking through the windows. So the windows are these types of actions, these types of tshuva that open up a window so that the light of the sun can be seen, and the light of the sun is always, Shemesh Havaya is always God. And the power to do this comes from Moshe Rabbeinu. As we know that he was the first one to fight against Amalek. And how did he fight against Amalek? He raised his hands. When he raised his hands, he gave them the motivation, the Joshua and the other warriors, to win against Amalek. And so again, here he's going in the same direction, that this means connecting with the Torah, which is called the Torah of Moshe, which is a big deal because we talked about the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu is not known in history. Nobody knows who this man was. The central figure of Jewish history is not known at all. The patriarchs are somewhat known. And Joshua and onwards we know from history, from archaeology. We know of their exploits. We know something about them. But Moses is completely gone. It's exactly the essence of this week's parsha, that his name is gone. He so nullified himself before God that it's like he never was. He was the most present person in the world, and yet somehow he's not here. So there's an amazing thing that even the Torah is not named after Moses. It takes another 1,000 years after he passes away until Malachi says, Zichru Torat Moshe Avdi. Recall, remember the Torah of Moshe my servant. He receives that in a prophecy.
That's why this week is called Shabbat Zochar.
Right, to remember. Very interesting.
We did the Shalom Zochar this week.
Very interesting. ויש לומר, דקה מבחינת תורה שנקראת תורת משה, והיינו דמשה המשיך בחינת התורה למטה, כי שורשו מן המים משיתו מבחינת מים דחוכמה. And how is he able to do this? Because he brings his root, where his soul comes from, is called the waters of wisdom. So this requires, there's a whole mimer in Torah Or about this. There's actually 2 mimarim in Torah Or. We learned them, that he's from a previous Shemitah and all that he comes from, that his soul comes from a much higher place than usual. In any case, the idea here simply is that he's water, like the Torah is likened to water. What? No, it's much higher. Nashama of Tov. And about the Torah, the sages say that the source of light within it brings a person back. So it means that there's a source of light in the Torah. Even though the Torah now is not called the source of light, we call it the light of Torah. It's not the source, it's the light that emanates from the Torah. Not the source itself. That's the Torah the way that we learn it now. But in the future, the inner essence of the Torah will be revealed, and that's the substance of it. And it's also called the reasons, or the causes behind why the Torah says what it says, why the mitzvot are the way they are. And here it's not about the mitzvot. It's why the Torah says what it says. We talked about this last time about the difference between low-hanging fruit and so the Torah that we learn now is what we call the novlot Torah, novlot chokhmah Torah. It's also the source is the wisdom. So we only what?
The leftovers?
No, not leftovers. Low-hanging fruit. It's a fruit that comes down very close to the ground, and you can pick it that way. That's the way we learn Torah now. We haven't penetrated into the essence, into the substance that's inside. And when this is revealed, it's from the same Torah. You don't need to change the text. It's still the same Torah exactly. There won't be a second giving of the Torah. So what we gather from all this is that the source, the substance of the light is within the Torah already now. That he puts himself aside. So he learns. So by learning Torah in such a way that you put yourself aside, that it's just a toil where you don't feel yourself. So it's able to break down this iron curtain. We said that's probably where it comes from. This iron wall between the mind and the heart, until you reach a state in which what you learn illuminates your heart and it brings you to action, and so you don't remain intellectually cold. And that's what we started with. You remember that it's better to have a close neighbor than a distant brother. And remember, we said the close neighbor was Yitro, and the distant brother is Amalek, who's our brother because he's a grandson of Esav. והנה יתרו על ידי שנכנע לקדושה, הרי המשיך תוספת אור בבחינת חוכמה, שנמשך בבחינת חוכמה למטה, שזה עניין מתן תורה. Because Jethro, as we saw in the previous essay that we were learning, he was the one who was instrumental in allowing the Torah to be brought into the world because of his conversion, because he went and took all the mundane knowledge of his era and said, and God is above this. And the revelation of God is higher than all the mundane knowledge, which in this time was in the form of idolatry or foreign practices or different types of animism, whatever they were worshipping at the time, but that represented their knowledge. That we just read. And he's the opposite, Jethro is the opposite of Amalek, our distant brother, who instead of adding more light, he creates a curtain between the intellect and the heart and prevents the Torah from shining in the person's actions. והוא ראשית גויים, ולכן אחריתו עדי עובד, ועל ידי התשובה ובחינת תורה, על ידי זה שוברים את הקיר ברזל דעמלק, ועושים בהם חלונות שעיר בחינת שמש הוויה, והוא שהומשך מבחינת המוחין במידות. Okay, so this is the main part of the Maimer. Now we have a little bit more left. And this is a section in and of itself. It's almost like a new essay. Okay, so let's start it. And we'll finish it next week. Why is it that the klipa, the impurity of Amalek, can only be elevated by breaking it? So he already said this in the body of the essay. He said that it's like an earthenware that has become unkosher. The only way to kosher it, the only way is to smash it, to break it into pieces. Usually when we say that something can be rectified, something can be fixed, the way we understand it is that it's done through wisdom. Wisdom is the fixer of the world. And that's the statement from the Zohar, b'chokhma yitbariru. With wisdom they are refined. So wisdom is good for everything. What's the problem though? בקליפת העמלק מפני שמטמא מוחין, רוצה לומר, רחמנא ליצלן, לכן אין בכוח חוכמה לברר כנ"ל. But the problem here is that the klipa, the impurity of Amalek, it also taints the mind. This we didn't talk about until now. Until now he said, you understand perfectly. You understand what the Torah says. Okay. We said he understands, he just can't bring it down to his heart, he can't bring it down to action. So he remains academic, coldly academic. But now he's bringing something new, that Amalek also taints the mind. How is that? But in any case, I don't remember if he explains it here, but in any case, that's why the wisdom won't help. Because after you've been affected by Amalek, your wisdom is not good enough, is not strong enough to refine Amalek. You can't use wisdom to fix wisdom. It's not going to work. ולבאר זה על דרך החסידות, יש לומר לפי עניות דעתי, דינים כבר בספר של בינונים פרק י' לעניין צדיק גמור הוא צדיק וטוב לו. So he says the way to understand this whole idea, why is it that Amalek taints the mind and why is it that the wisdom won't work here? He says we have to go back to the Tanya. And there in the Tanya it says in chapter 10 that a consummate tzaddik, a consummate pious man, is one who is described as he's pious and it is good for him. Tzaddik v'tov lo. V'hainu al yedei asarat ha'begadim hatzorim legamre. And that is achieved by completely removing one's soiled garments. What are my soiled?
Doesn't talk about going to the mikveh.
What?
Doesn't talk about going to the mikveh.
No, there's not talking about it.
Never mentioned anywhere.
Why are you thinking about the mikveh here? Garments here, he means your actions.
I remember when I first came to Shiva, they said to me, okay, you got to wipe out all the garbage. Go on the mikveh and throw it.
That's not to be a consummate tzaddik. That's just to be a beinoni.
To be a normal person.
Yeah. Here is something else. What does it mean to not have the soiled garments? Garments are a thought, speech, and action. If I can even entertain in my mind that to think something negative about someone is okay, sometimes, whatever, I have a reason for it, so that's not a consummate tzaddik. A consummate tzaddik can't even think that. If I can even think about eating something that's not kosher, I'm not talking about whether I know or don't know. Well, even if I don't know, right? That's the example that's usually given. That a consummate tzaddik, if he looks at a plate that has
What's the consummate tzaddik? I don't even know.
tzaddik gamur.
What?
Tzaddik gamur.
Yeah.
A tzaddik gamur is a higher level than everything else. At his level, if he even looks at a plate that has something that's not kosher on it, it looks to him like it's eating dirt. He can't even bring himself to touch it. It's like asking him to eat little pebbles. He can't eat it. That's what it means to change your garments. To change your garments means even your connection to the world through your thought, speech, and action is in such a way, it's so clean that you think about it. It's like a bride on her wedding day. She's wearing her wedding dress. She can't even come close to things that look maybe a little dirty because she's going to ruin her dress. So she's like this. A consummate tzaddik is like that. He can't bring himself even close to these things. He's like on his wedding. He's like a bride on her wedding day. Okay, so we'll continue, God willing, on Sunday.
Where's your cup?